So now that we've got the recording in progress, like I was saying, you'll receive a resources, a link to a resources page with the transcripts of the Zoom, the recording of the Zoom, a list, the email list of everybody who is here who agreed to share their email address when they signed up, and contact information for our presenters, and maybe something else if it seems appropriate to do so. So with that, I'm going to go quiet for a little bit here, and I'm going to turn over the screen and the microphone to my friend Debbie Newman, who runs our local chapter or section for the American Society for Quality. Debbie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mark. I hope everybody's doing well out there. My name is Debbie Newman, and I'm the membership chair of our local ASQ section. And I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of our ASQ Tidewater local section of the American Society for Quality. Our motto is striving to be your quality resource of choice. We have monthly events on a variety of quality topics, and we're always looking for volunteers to serve on our leadership team to promote quality in our region. If you're interested in any of getting involved with ASQ or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be provided in the resources. And you can also visit asq.org for more information. For those of you who are looking for recertification units for this event, we have those, and you'll need to get in touch with me and we'll get you those certificates. I'd also now like to introduce our first speaker is David Dufay. He's a retired Navy captain after having served for 30 years in the submarine force. For the past 8 years, Dave has been working in quality management and is currently the Director of Quality at Fairlead Incorporated in Portsmouth, Virginia. He has both a green belt and a black belt in lean principles. Dave, welcome, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks so much, Debbie. Welcome to all of you, particularly from those of you from long away locations like the Philippines. Having been to the Philippines as a naval officer, it's a beautiful country, and I'm so glad you're participating in today's event. Today is a unique opportunity for me to talk about something that I've spent quite a bit of time with since I've retired from the Navy, and that's the topic of operational excellence. Next slide. Oh, we're not doing, you got my slides?
Yeah, buddy.
All right, next slide. So in talking about operational excellence, I just want to say that this is, although it applies to businesses, it also works for all organizations. And
hey, Dave, give me 1 second here.
okay.
I just need to make a quick tweak here. You can tell that we've I've clearly practiced this quite a bit. So bear with me 1 second. I'm going to turn off sharing just one bit. I apologize for that, but we'll be right back for this. So you keep talking and I'll catch up with you.
All right, great. So basically, operational excellence is really a leadership program, and it applies to any organization or business. So that's the key. And when you think about operational excellence, I want you to think about strategy and planning, and how do you make your organization better as a result of that. So, but I want to point out, and I will probably stress this over and over again throughout the presentation, that this does not work unless the senior leadership, which is usually the head of the organization or the president of the company or the CEO of the business, is completely involved and engaged with operational excellence. But I want to say it works for membership organizations, it works for nonprofits, it works for service companies and businesses, and it also works very well for manufacturing organizations. But the focus here is on planning, leadership, and execution. And if we can get those three concepts into your head, that'll be great. That's really the key to this presentation. Next slide. You're going to see many names for operational excellence depending upon where you work and what industry you're in, and and how it's actually developed. But basically, I've seen it called operational excellence, strategy deployment, policy deployment. It's all about the same. They mean the same thing, and it's all applied fairly much the same way. Next slide. So what is operational excellence? Okay, it's the execution of a strategy. And every business, every organization should take some time to develop strategic planning and develop some strategic goals. It's also about problem solving. It involves leadership and it involves teamwork. The beauty of it is that it keeps your employees or the members in your organization positive about the organization because you're actually accomplishing goals. And in many cases, it allows them to be empowered, particularly if they're given the opportunity to make changes to the organization and those changes are sustained and people feel good about, what they accomplished. It's continuously improving your activities in your workplace. That could be processes. It could be basic daily work. It could be how do we improve the growth of the membership drive, but you're always working on continuous improvement. And ultimately, it sets the organization up for some level of growth, whatever that is in your organization. And ideally, it involves every person at every level. This is not a just a senior leadership group or the executive committee or what have you. This operational excellence goes down to the lowest person at the lowest level of the organization, where they feel like they're part of the decisions and they're also part of the changes and growth, and they feel empowered. Next slide. So some of the principles, and these are really leadership skills. If you look at them, they go hand in hand. Dr. Shigeo Shingo, who I've met personally, has written 18 books on operational excellence of some sort. But if you look at the leadership skills that he's identified here as sort of related topics and aspects of operational excellence, you'll see that it is very much the same kind of things that you would expect from good leaders and good organizations. Respect for your individuals, humility, embracing thinking, scientific thinking, assure quality at the source, which is 100% first pass yield at the source. Nothing leaves your desk or your workstation or whatever it is that you're working on with an anticipation that it's going to come back after it's been reviewed. You think systematically. Flow and pull are more related to manufacturing, but that's clearly one of the values and the skill sets that they expect. Create consistency of purpose. This is really key for the members of your organization. And then depending upon what business or organization you're in, if you have customers, obviously, this will help to create value for the customer. Next slide. So how do you execute operational excellence? And we'll take the concept that you're running a business or you're running an organization or you're just a membership group, whatever it is that you're involved with or you're helping to manage. The principles pretty much stay the same. It starts with strategic planning, and it doesn't matter when you do the strategic planning. Typically, if you're working to a budget of some sort, then the planning usually starts 6 months before the budget is finalized and executed. So, and most organizations and companies do it about that same time frame. For those of you that are out there and you're working in business, I will tell you that if you haven't been involved with specifically the strategic planning, your company probably has. they get the group of decision makers and leadership team together. They talk about the growth improvements that they want to sustain or develop. They talk about customer challenges or business challenges, or even organizational challenges. And that could be something as simple as, you know, how do we increase the membership? Or how do we get, you know, more, you know, contributors to our fundraising efforts, or what have you? Or what fundraising drives are we going to do next year that's going to bring in a much higher value? Those are the kind of things that go into planning. Understanding SWOT analysis, and for those of you that have not had training in that, that's basically strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is what most organizations think about in terms of their actual growth. You know, strengths and opportunities, those are easy. Understanding your weaknesses and then understanding your threats are key. Not all of you are in a business to make profit, but every one of us is subject to one of these four things, no matter what organization we belong to. And we need to make sure that we understand them and we've got a plan to handle them. And then understanding your competition and substitute competition for any kind of threat to your ability to accomplish your goals. Okay. And in the business world, obviously, competition can threaten your ability to make more profit if they steal your business. Okay, but it could be that, hey, you're competing for you know, some kind of fundraising opportunity and effort. Your competition may be 6 or 7 other membership organizations all trying to do the same thing at the same time. Planning around that would certainly help in understanding how you can better perform. Once you develop your strategic plan, it continues during your budget planning, because here is if you have a budget or you're organizing a budget, you need to know how your plan fits into that budget. So if the budget is to, let's just say at a company, is to increase your operating profit by 10% next year, then how does your strategic planning from operational excellence help you get there? You know, what activities, what events, what things is a company going to do to help with that particular growth? And then the plan's usually finalized at the end of the year, so you can start promptly at the beginning of the year. It doesn't matter whether it's calendar year or fiscal year or whenever you you know, turn over. Most organizations have a yearly plan, and they have a yearly start date and a yearly end date. But you know, whenever you begin your new year, that's when you usually start executing your operational excellence plan. Next slide. Okay, so typically for businesses, even for organizations, you're going to need someone to help manage this. And you know, I know it says, well, that's what we have a leadership team for. I will tell you that when it comes to operational excellence and strategic planning, you need a champion. You need someone who is, you know, focused on, you know, the strategic plan, is calling the meetings when they need to be called. He or she is evaluating, you know, what the metrics that you're going to capture look like, when you're going to review them, etc. So someone that has some experience in managing programs. That could be a program manager. It could be somebody that's a good, strong manager. It could be a volunteer in an organization who has leadership and management skills, but pick somebody that can manage this. You want to pick 2 or 3, what I call must-win battles. Another name for them is strategic objectives, but you don't want to do too many. If your organization is saying, okay, we want to capture, let's just say at a membership organization, you want to capture you know, 20% more younger people under the age of 30. That's a strategic objective. Put that down on the list. If your strategic objective is, hey, we want to, you know, we want to raise or we want to do 2 more fundraising events for our club or organization next year, or we want to capture 16 new sponsors for our organization. Those are strategic objectives. But like I said, don't pick too many. They're hard to, they do become a resource drain on your organization. If you're a member of a company that's doing business, keep in mind, typically this activity is overhead activity. It's not directly, direct labor activity. And so you want to make sure that you're not killing yourselves in overhead trying to execute this plan. Then for each one of those objectives, you want to select a leader for that objective. Someone who manages that. That in some organizations, that's easy. It could be human resources is responsible for that, or engineering is responsible for that, or in a membership organization, it could be, Dave Jones is the guy that seems to have the most expertise in finance. We're going to have him run the getting more sponsors committee. But you want to pick a team leader, and then you want to pick a team. And it doesn't have to be a big team. It depends on the size of your organization. But pick 2 or 3 people and pick them from different levels and from different walks of life. Get them engaged. Sometimes you don't want experts on that committee. You want people who know nothing about that particular event, because they always ask the hard question. Why are we doing this? You plan the years in halves, and then obviously it's easier to plan the year in halves because you might want to do 2 activities in the first half and 2 activities in the second half. You use projects or events or whatever in a more mature company. You might get to the point where you actually have green belts and black belts who can actually manage the projects and events and facilitate. But it doesn't matter what level of maturity that your organization is in, this process works. And so even if you don't have green belts or black belts, or you don't have the money to do that, just pick a leader that can actually help facilitate different events to make sure that you get this done. So, and then for smaller organizations, define measurable targets. You want to select strategic objectives, and you want to review periodically. For some companies, it might be your board of directors who reviews those goals, and they meet 6 times a year. That might be a great place to review your strategic objectives and what are the metrics that you're looking at, and then how do you review periodically. Next slide. So assign someone to accomplish. This is for small organizations or small businesses and I put this slide in there to make sure that this works for everybody. If you don't think that operational excellence is something that would work for you, you got to give it a try. And it can be at any size, at any level. I'll tell you, I'm on the board of directors for the Armed Services YMCA, nonprofit organization that supports junior enlisted personnel and helping them with child care and child activities. Great organization. I approached them and said, what's your plan for operational excellence in 2021? And they looked at me like I was talking Greek. And then I said, look, this is just planning. It's a strategic plan. What are the activities that you guys want to accomplish in 2021? And out of the blue, I started getting, well, we want to grow, the number of elementary schools that we're training at. Yeah, we want to get 16 more, faculty to help with the aftercare programs. And before you know it, I had 17 different targets that they were looking for. So then we went after the top 3. And by gosh, that organization now is well in their way in 2021, and they've already hit their objectives, every single one of them. But as the executive director told me, we would have never gotten there without some kind of strategic plan, review of targets, measurable targets, and our ability to be able to accomplish what we wanted, because it forced us to come up with activities to meet those goals. And that's what operational excellence is all about. Next slide. Next slide. So overcoming some challenges. You're going to see detachment on occasion. You got to select team members from across all levels of the organization to reduce this. You're going to see lack of progress. And this is where monthly reviews come in. You know, if you're not looking at yourself and asking where you stand and looking at your progress, you're going to, you know, nobody's actually keeping the accountability up for the individuals. Lack of appetite for adaptation. This is where you change things and people say, nah, I don't really like that. You know, that was a good idea when we did the, you know, the little team meeting, but I don't really like that. I'm not going to do that. That's where accountability comes into place, and you have to get them involved, the senior management, to make sure that people are actually changing and adapting to the way that you identify. In some organizations, you can get too complex with your metrics and what are your targets and how do you evaluate it. Don't get too far in the weeds. The data you collect needs to help you assess progress. Don't be measuring things that you don't need to measure. And then also siloed management. This is a continued problem, and you have to have a plan that bridges the gaps between processes and functional areas. This is more key in those organizations that have functional areas. But even in small organizations, you may get siloed groups, and you want to have a plan that bridges those groups such that you're all operating as one team, you know, trying to move forward on your strategic plan. Next slide. Now I'm going to open it up to questions. I know, and I took just about 15 minutes, I think, and we want to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions about it. I just want to re-emphasize the three things that I said in the beginning, and it's really the key to success. This is all about planning, leadership, and execution. You got to do a plan. Without a plan, you're never going to get there. And the leadership, the senior leadership, has to be engaged. This is not a grassroots opportunity or exercise. This is not, 15 people saying, boy, we really need to change the way we do X. And then you go through a lot of activity and grassroots swelling, and you think you've accomplished something, and the leadership of the company says, I don't have the money for that, or we don't have the budget for that. Great idea, let's table that for 2 years. The senior leader has to drive this, and he or she has to be the champion for operational excellence to be successful. And then you got to execute it properly. And like I said, don't hesitate to start 6 months before the end of your calendar year to start planning next year. And make sure that execution starts with a good understanding of what you want to accomplish in the upcoming year, and then get that down. It could be 22 things, and many times it is. And then it takes some time to actually sort through that and pick the top 3 or 4 that you really need to accomplish, and then you go execute. And that's really the keys to success in operational excellence. I will stop talking, and I will open it up for questions.
So as a reminder, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat box now, if you'd be so kind. Dave, I don't see any new questions. There was just one question about going, maybe you could go a little bit more into the SWOT analysis.
Sure. So if you this is great for companies that really are trying to understand the 4 areas. I don't have the the nice slide that shows the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But what are your company's strengths? And you should know those. Like we're number 1 in our industry, or we are manufacturing new products that no one else has, or we have 16 patents. Those are all strengths, okay? What are your weaknesses? Well, we don't have nearly the engineering team that we need, or we're really weak in our organization in capturing, young people's thoughts and ideas, or we have too many old people and we're stagnant. Those could be weaknesses. Then opportunities. Hey, what are the opportunities for the upcoming year? Okay, it could be that COVID's dying off. Let's hope that happens. And we will be able to have more, group meetings or group activities where we don't have to do everything virtually. This is an opportunity to increase, one or two events that we weren't going to do the previous year. And then obviously threats, as I said before, is what's the threat to your organization and the success of your organization? I know in membership organizations, many times the threat is, donor fatigue, or it could be, if you're nonprofit, it could be we have too many activities and not enough people to run them, or we have an outside organization that has been pilfering some of our best members for their little group, and there's not enough time to do one thing or another. So what are those threats? And you should have an understanding. I guarantee you, if you get the right people in the room, you're going to find out what your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats are. In businesses, this is usually done by your business development organization. They're the ones that usually have a fairly good handle on SWOT analysis. They lay it out, and then you discuss it, and then make sure you vet the key areas, all 4 key areas, so that you don't miss anything. And that really helps with your strategic planning. Hopefully that answers that question, Mark.
All right, thanks for that, Dave. Are there any other questions we've got for Dave about operational excellence in general, or the topics he just covered?
Well, if you can see the slide, I certainly put my contact information. Don't hesitate to ask me for help or for questions. Getting started is usually the big challenge, but it's not as hard as you think. I've helped many organizations with this, and I've helped several nonprofits on their boards. But I can tell you from my experience that a good development, good strategic plan, good strategy planning and execution is an amazing thing. You'll be amazed at the results that you get. So I wish you all the best of luck. Hope you're able to apply it in your businesses and your organizations. And you've got my information if you need to get a hold of me. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
All right, it was great. Debbie?
Hi, thank you, Dave. I do enjoy the concept of strategic planning. That's so proactive versus being reactive and putting out fires and not having a good plan for the year and the value for the customer. So thank you. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, is Miss Lucy King. She's a certified Six Sigma Black Belt with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and a master's in business administration. She has over 14 years experience in quality management, instructional design, and Lean Six Sigma improvements. She's now the owner of kingqa LLC, which provides e-learning and online templates for quality systems and continual process improvement. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you, Debbie. That was great. And I hope that the presentation that I'm about to share with you adds to and reinforces what Dave has been talking about this morning. So yes, I will. Mark, can I go ahead and share my screen?
You certainly should be able to.
Okay. Okay, so today I want to talk about the discovery phase in the context that is useful for association leaders. This is an original concept that I came up with, and I'm sharing it with you today. If you want some more information or consultation from kingqa, my website is here, kingqa.com. But hold on, there we go. Okay, so Debbie talked about this already. I'll skip this introduction slide there. So today's presentation is structured with the assumption that your association has or wants an improvement program. If you have not even thought about it, hopefully this will give you some ideas to consider. Lean Six Sigma is a conglomeration of lean manufacturing and Six Sigma quality concepts and tools that help with continual improvement. The concepts have been created by a multitude of innovative thinkers and combined into one extensive tool set. I'm going to start by providing context for the discovery phase. I will explain Lean Six Sigma's DMAIC cycle, that's DMAIC, then how the discovery phase fits in with the DMAIC cycle using kingqa's exclusive Lean Six Sigma wheel, and a few Lean Six Sigma tools, 3 to be more specific, that can be used during the discovery phase by association leaders. So here are the list of things that we're going to talk about today. So the DMAIC cycle, the King Lean Six Sigma wheel, Gimbal Walk, 8 Waste Hidden Factory. These are the 3 tools that I want to talk about that can be used in the discovery phase. And I'll also list a couple of other tools that I'm not going to describe that can also be used in the discovery phase. So the creator of the DMAIC cycle is a little bit foggy, but it evolved organically from Walter Schuert's Plan, Do, Study, Act, PDCHR cycle, described by W. Edwards Deming in the New Economics book in 1993. So here's a diagram of the DMAIC cycle. You can see it starts with define, then measure, then analyze, improve, and control. And I'll go into each one of those. The purpose is the DMAIC cycle is a systematic process for implementing improvement projects. It's central to Six Sigma methodology. The intention is for the cycle to start over at the beginning of each project, being used for projects repeatedly with the goal of achieving overall excellent quality performance over time. So there are 5 phases in the DMAIC cycle, as I previously mentioned. The first one is define. That's when you define the problem to be solved, whether it be external customer requirements that are not being met or an internal process that is ineffective. The measure phase of the DMAIC cycle is when you measure the extent of the problem. So that's when you put numbers to how big the problem is. The analyze phase is the 3rd step in the DMAIC cycle, and that is when you figure out all the contributing factors and root causes of the problem. And that's so you know how to improve it. So in the improve phase, that's when you use appropriate tools to improve the process based on the results of the define, measure, and analyze phases. So those first 3 phases build up to the improve phase, which is the fun part where you get to actually change things. The control phase is the last step of the DMAIC cycle for each project. And that is when you proactively put measures in place to ensure that the new or updated process is working and stays working. All right, so that's the entire DMAIC cycle to give you an idea of the pre-existing information that Lean Six Sigma is based on. Now, I have zoomed out and created the King Lean Six Sigma wheel to explain how DMAIC fits into your business or organization. So the Lean Six Sigma wheel zooms out to explain the overall improvement system and how the DMAIC cycle fits within it. I have added 5 elements surrounding the DMAIC cycle to communicate a bigger picture of the system. There are 7 steps and 10 elements in the bigger picture, with roles as a central function. That's the middle circle, that's dark blue, and team management and project management as supporting processes during the DMAIC step. So these are 2 elements that are in orange here to support the actual steps in red. So what are the roles? Well, role definition is central to all steps of the cycle. Each organization will have its own set of job titles or roles defined. But I'm going to talk today about how association leaders can participate in each element of the King Lean Six Sigma wheel. So improvement opportunity discovery. This is the first step in the Lean Six Sigma wheel of 7 steps. The first step in the cycle is to discover opportunities for improvement. Association leaders are responsible for encouraging association members and stimulating individual discovery and submission of opportunities for improvement. So individuals are doing this step of discovery. It doesn't matter who it is, they can do it. Project selection and prioritization. Now somebody has to make some executive decisions. So management is the party responsible for doing the second phase of the Lean Six Sigma wheel. The second step in the cycle is to select and prioritize projects to address opportunities for improvement. Association leaders are responsible for reviewing submitted ideas, selecting appropriate projects, and prioritizing them for implementation. So that's the second step of the Lean Six Sigma wheel. Then I want to talk about the supporting steps in orange for the rest of the Lean Six Sigma wheel. So one of those is team management. So that's management of project team behavior and motivation. And that occurs throughout steps 3 through 7 of the cycle, which is the DMAIC cycle within this larger picture. Association leaders are responsible for ensuring a project team and team leader are in place for implementing improvement projects. So you may not have the bandwidth to do this yourself, but as a leader, but you may at least be able to put a team together and make sure somebody is in charge of that team to make the project happen that you want to happen. So then we have project management, which is the other supporting element for the DMAIC cycle within the Lean Six Sigma wheel. And this is management of project tasks and timeline that occur throughout steps 3 through 7 of the cycle. So that's different from team management, where team management is people oriented and talks about behavior and motivation, whereas project management is more about the tasks themselves. So you're managing the task list and the timeline or the schedule of a project. Association leaders check in with the project teams that they've ensured were set up and hold them accountable for improvement project progress. So that's their role in the project management element of this wheel. All right, so I'm not going to re-explain the DMAIC cycle, but Steps 3 through 7 are the DMAIC cycle that I showed you earlier. And so that's step 3 through 7 of the wheel. Association leaders are responsible for ensuring that project teams are following the DMAIC cycle when projects are complex enough to deem it necessary. It won't always be necessary. There could be a bunch of little stuff that can be improved without having to go through the whole shebang of the DMAIC cycle. However, skipping steps is bad when the problem is complex, but the implementation is not proportional to that complexity. So everything has to be proportional, no matter how complex the project is. All right, so I have given you some context about what's Lean Six Sigma, what's the DMAIC cycle, what's the King Lean Six Sigma wheel, and how does the discovery phase fit into that? So now I'm going to get into the weeds of performing and conducting the discovery phase itself. And I'm going to talk about 3 tools that can be used in the discovery phase and provide an explanation for them. So those 3 will be Gimbal Walk, 8 Waste, and the Hidden Factory. You may have already heard about the 8 Waste. It's pretty common, but you may not have heard about Gimbal Walk or the Hidden Factory. So I'm looking forward to sharing those with you. So the Gimbal Walk is something that was created by Taichi Ono and documented in the book Toyota Production System Beyond Large Scale Production in 1988. Move this. All right, so as you can see, I have a picture here, and it's just supposed to be a manufacturing operation and some people looking at it. So the purpose of a Gimbal Walk, the Japanese Gemba or Genba term translates to go see, ask why, and show respect in English. So you're going to see the production operation and the people who are doing it, and you're asking why they do the things the way they do. And you show them respect as being the subject matter experts of whatever they're doing, because they do that job all day, every day, and they will know things you don't know if you're not also doing that same job. So they will be the subject matter experts of what they're working on. So you should show them respect in that regard. Regarding discovery of improvement opportunities, going on Gimbal Walks can show how an observer realize step-by-step activities, employee frustrations, and other problems that they would not normally see. So how it works. Okay, so this means going to the actual place that the process is happening to watch it unfold, asking questions when the reason for certain methods seems unclear, and being respectful to the process owners and operators as the true subject matter experts in what they're working on. During Gimbal Walks, association members can look for elements of the 8 Waste or Hidden Factory. That's why I presented the Gimbal Walk first, because you can use it to make the other 2 tools that I'm going to talk about happen. So we'll go through these other 2 tools next. Okay, so the 8 forms of waste. This was created by Taichi Ono and documented in the book Toyota Production System Beyond Large Scale Production in 1988. So that may sound familiar because that was also the book that talked about Gimbal Walk. So here I have a diagram on the right. People like to use this downtime acronyms to explain or to list out the 8 wastes. So that's defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized resources, transportation, inventory, motion, and excessive processing. So I'm going to go through each one of those so you know what's the difference and what are they. So the downtime acronym for the 8 wastes is used to look at production processes through the lens of each category and identify existing waste. Regarding discovery of improvement opportunities, this exercise can expose how time or resources are being wasted and provide focus for processes that need to be overhauled. An explanation of each category is provided below. So the words are going to change. I'll leave the diagram up there on each slide. So D is for defects. This is an unnatural rate of defects in production or service provision. It can be before or after delivery to the customer. And we have O for overproduction. This is buildup of unused raw materials, inactive work in progress, that's WIP, or unsold finished goods inventory. Then we have W for waiting. This is an unnatural level of non-value added time during or between operational steps, adding to overall lead time. N is for non-utilized resources. These are unused equipment, facilities, or people with respect to wasted time. It can also be people who are overqualified for the work they are assigned and are not being used at their full potential. You smart people probably know what I'm talking about with that one. All right, transportation, ST. This is unnecessary movement of information or materials from one location to another. And it's a little bit different from motion, which I'll talk about, but transportation is between 2 different locations, whereas motion is within 1 location. So I'll get into that. I is for inventory. This is when excess inventory is inadequately protected and or sits so long that it begins to suffer damage or deterioration. This is about quality issues with inventory, whereas overproduction, which I talked about earlier, is about quantity issues with inventory, too much inventory. Then we have M for motion, the second to last one. This is unnecessary movement of information or materials within a single location, such as issues with ergonomics, disorganization, task switching, or interruptions. E is for excessive processing. This is an unnatural level of work being done during production above and beyond what is required, such as overkill workmanship or manual labor being done when it could be automated. All right, so those are the 8 wastes. I'll go back to that so you can refresh your memory on that. There's defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized resources, transportation, inventory, motion, and excessive processing. So the next topic that I want to talk about, the last of the 3 that I'm going to actually explain, is the hidden factory. The hidden factory builds on and supplements the 8 wastes. This was created by Armand Valen Feigenbaum and documented in the book Total Quality Control in 1961. So you can see I have my little factory hidden behind some trees right there. So the purpose, the hidden factory concept is closely related to the 8 wastes in that there is some overlap of issues mentioned. However, the hidden factory concept focuses on the extra labor and materials that comprise and or compensate for the 8 wastes. It's important for association leaders not to take this tool too literally, as it is not only appropriate for factories making products, but can also be used for intangible services provided by associations. All right, so here I've got a diagram comparing the 8 wastes to the hidden factory. Let me move my little thing in case it's blocking something. All right, so the 8 wastes are easily identified, but when processes are looked at through the hidden factory lens, as I've shown here, there may be many other productivity and efficiency issues that accompany them. So we've got the 8 wastes in black over here, but when you put this extra hidden factory lens on it, all this other red stuff starts showing up. So here we describe 9 additional complications in unstreamlined processes. Adjustments is one. Yes, I have that one there. These are little changes being made repeatedly in service provision to compensate for inadequate process design. And I've kind of worded these explanations for association leaders. Delays, that's here. Delays occur when services are left waiting in-house. Mistakes need to be reworked, or service provision is stopped to fix some issue. Extra inspections. Extra inspections are put into place when mistake rates are high and the root cause in the process design has not yet been addressed. Ineffective communication. This occurs when the incorrect communication format is used or documented instructions are inadequate or unclear. Then we have missed operations. Whole or partial operations can get left behind when planning is poor and association members are rushing to get jobs done. Opportunity costs. Opportunity costs arise when inefficiencies occur because that non-value added time could be better spent on value added labor. Similarly, funds allocated to unnecessary supplies for rework could be better spent on value added supplies. Service provision stoppages. That's right here, I had it. The original for manufacturing is production stoppages. Stoppages can happen when mistakes need to be fixed, adjustments need to be made, or revisions must be routed mid-service provision. Revisions, like I just mentioned as an example of causing production stoppages. Revisions are necessary when documented instructions are inadequate or process designs contain mistakes. We have rework. Services may need to be reworked when mistakes are severe enough to be unacceptable for use by the client. It may also be a result of modifying services to comply with a new process revision. All right, so I talked about all these other 9 hidden factory tools that go along with the 8 wastes. If you notice, there's a lot of overlap and interconnection between or among all these hidden factory elements, and that's not an accident. It just goes to show that when one of these happens, it could start making some of these other hidden factory elements show up. So it could be a vicious cycle or blow things up more than the original issue. All right, so I talked about Gimbal Walk, the 8 wastes, and the hidden factory that can be used in the discovery phase. However, there are a bunch of other tools that can also be used in the discovery phase that I did not talk about. So for example, Hoshin-Conry, or the X matrix, is also known as the X matrix. Hurt analysis, that is program evaluation and review technique. That's a network diagram. And then we have pest analysis, SWOT analysis, which Dave talked about earlier. And we have the tactical goal breakdown, the chalk circle, which is a more specific version of Gimbal Walk, We have leader standard work. All of these tools can be used in the discovery phase to discover opportunities for improvement. All right, so this is just the last slide to allow for questions. I have my website there in case you want to learn anything more. You can go to my website to view the QMS development, auditing, Lean Six Sigma services. We do training as well. Find links to quality resources and books, and browse frequently asked questions with informative answers. I'm gonna stop sharing here so we can get into discussion. Are there
All right,
any?
thanks, Lucy. I don't know about the rest of everybody on the call, but I've got pages full of notes here, stuff to use, not only here at PDCHR, but some professional societies that I'm engaged in. I appreciate the depth, the word for me is saying, okay, what can we apply here, and what's good for learning more about. So with that, anyways, let me make sure that we've remind everybody that if you have questions for Lucy about what she presented, or demand cycle and all this goodness in general, we've got a few minutes so you can answer them right now. If not, when you get your thanks for attending email next week, that'll have a link back also to, you can contact Lucy directly. So you got a shout out from Julie. Lucy, love what you've done.
Thank you.
So anybody else have questions you'd like to share at this time, or put in the chat box? There's a comment from Bill. That was neat. I have not thought about applying so many of those to various parts of his business, such as when he was publishing a magazine. So yeah, it's just one of those you don't know what you don't know type things, maybe. Anybody else have a question or a thought, comment?
Hey, Mark, this is Bill.
Hey, Bill.
So just to expound on that, and Lucy, thanks very much. So I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years and published a magazine for 20 of those, and I do various things consulting now. So your presentation was valuable for me to think about how, say a big company, production facility, a factory, works on efficiencies. And certainly when you think about an organization, association, or small business, you tend not to think you have the resources to do that. But you showed that you can take parts and pieces of this and apply those even to a 1-2 person company, or maybe a 5 or 10 person board organization. So I found that very valuable, and I hope that others on the call realize that, yeah, the examples are from big business, but they can certainly be applied to small business, or a small association, a small group. So thank you for that.
Sure, I'm glad you found the information useful.
Very much, thank you.
Very cool. Anybody else? All right, what I'd like to do here, and I'm going to take all my presenters by surprise, is I'm going to suggest we just take a 5-minute break here. We've all been parked for the best part of an hour, some of us a little bit longer than that. So we'll go ahead. It's 11:02 right now. We'll start again at 11:07. So you're welcome to hang out. If you are going to go use the restroom, turn your mic off, please. So that we'll see you back here in about 5 minutes. for Erez de Guzman and also Jamari Burilan. Please check the chat box. I've asked you for some contact information so I can make sure you get the material after this next week. Thanks. All right, everybody. Hope you made use of your 5-minute break. Debbie, are you back with us?
Hi, Mark. It's Debbie. Yes, thank you.
All right, Debbie, you are on. You and
Great.
Stephen, bring us home.
Great. I want to thank Lucy for her presentation. Really focusing on with the discovery phase, having that full understanding of the opportunities that are in front of you at your association, and also how it's easy to customize the tools to what you need, knowing that there's lots of tools out there. There's probably one that's going to be helpful for all organizations while they're trying to identify the opportunities that they should spend their time wisely on. So thank you. And I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Dr. Stephen Cotter. He's a senior lecturer with the Engineering Management and Systems Engineering Department at Old Dominion University. He's a certified quality engineer and a certified reliability engineer with ASQ. Dr. Cotter has over 40 years experience in various engineering and management positions in the industry. Welcome, Dr. Cotter.
Thank you. I'm trying to share my screen. It's a walk and chew gum at the same time problem for me. There you go. I've also got, I'm going to have to go off that, sorry. Now I can move that off. Let me bring back up the chat. Okay, as you can see, the title here is Statistical Engineering Your Business. We'll make that a little bit clearer later. When I put this presentation together, I really thought about orienting toward association building. Then I realized it doesn't matter if you're delivering a product, if you're delivering a service, or if you're you have clients and you're building an association, you're still managing a business. And businesses are all constrained by the same requirements. I've got to get my focus back on my right screen. There we go. So we'll quick review of what is statistical engineering, brief history, how did we get here, who is a statistical engineer, why is it relevant to you in building associations, statistical thinking fundamentals, translating them into association building, and applying statistical thinking to your business, because even if you are in the business of constructing or supplying skills, leadership skills for developing associations, it's still a business. So from the International Statistical Engineering Association webpage, they define statistical engineering as the study of systematic integration of statistical concepts, methods, and tools, often with other relevant disciplines to solve important problems sustainably. Key terms there are systematic and solving important problems sustainably. As previous speakers said, once you solve a problem, you want it to never come back. So translated for you as association leaders and for business in general, it's the application of statistical thinking to understand customer demand and market and supply chain processes and trends that may affect profitability, or in your case, your client's profitability. Brief history. It goes back to 1947, R.C. Tumbleton's article in the American Statistician. He noted that statistical methods are an indispensable tool of management and engineering science. So it doesn't matter. They're tools, and they should be used as tools to help understand variation. 1963 to 1990, a number of foundational books were written on statistical engineering. Current works, the current approach is the ISEA approach, is based on Horrell and Snee's book, Statistical Thinking, Improving Business Performance. And then, of course, they've translated that now into a handbook of statistical engineering. I'll note, for those of you who are interested, you can go online, type ISEA. I've been a member for 2 years now. And ISEA as an association still does not charge membership fees. It's just that, an association like your building. So it's membership is free again this coming year. And they do. I have not had the opportunity to contribute. There have been a number of good webinars on various aspects of applying statistical engineering to industry, to services. From Tumbleton, what is this thing we call a statistical engineer? From Tumbleton's definition, a statistical engineer is anyone who designs or engineers a business process. And as I said, we all have business processes, even in association building, or manages a business process. So by Tumbleton's definition, you, I, and everybody else are a statistical engineer for your business or for your association clients. The key to being an effective statistical engineer is not training in mathematical statistics. That's my love. Leave that up to me. My wife already tells me I'm not normal. Okay, I'll buy that. But that's the way it goes. But it's not the mathematical statistics, it's the statistical thinking. Thinking about sources of variation and how you're going to manage those sources of variation in your process. From Horrell's and Snee's book, statistical thinking is defined as a way of understanding a complex world by describing it in relatively simple terms that nonetheless capture the essential aspects of its structure. key term is simplicity and understanding structure, and also provides us some idea of how uncertain we are about our knowledge. In my, I forget which class it is I teach, but the statistics are practical problems are about the decisions we have to make. Statistical solutions gives us an estimate of the uncertainty about those decisions. So that's the two elements here. The simplest possible terms, understanding the structure of your client's needs, and also understanding how uncertain you are about that knowledge. So basics, foundations. Previous presentations, we presented the scientific method. DMAIC, PDCA, or PDSA are really the scientific method. Systems thinking, process thinking, structured but not a rigid approach. This is where Lean was always successful. As I've managed Six Sigma Black or Lean Black Belt programs, Green Belt programs, and that's what Lean really brings to Six Sigma. Six Sigma was a very structured approach, mathematically oriented, statistical mathematics, and it didn't solve all the problems. When we put Lean in there, Lean provides its own 5-step structure, but it's not rigid, and it allows for adaptation and overcoming and learning from the journey. You always want to do that. That's why it's the PDCA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, Plan, Do, Check, Act. So those are our basic foundations. This is out of Horrell and Sneed's book. It's adapted by the International Statistical Engineering Association. And we can see that, again, going back to our earlier discussion, at the strategic level, it's all about statistical thinking. And that's where I'm going to stay today here. There's also the tactical level. This is the actual statistical engineering. That's where I like to be with the mathematical models, simulations, etc. And then the operational level, you saw some of these statistical methods and tools in the previous discussion, used throughout the various DMAIC cycle. So this is the overall key, but I'm going to stay at the statistical thinking level today. Fundamental principles of statistical engineering. All work occurs in a system of interconnected processes, and all systems have processes. In putting together an association where you are trying to produce powerful collective systemic outcomes, you have to understand the interconnections within that association of individuals to produce the desired outcomes. Variation exists in all processes. This is where the statistics and the uncertainty come in. And understanding and reducing variation are key processes. So that's our total focus in statistical engineering. It really came out of DMAIC, the Lean Six Sigma, understanding and reducing variation. Statistical engineering management approach. We view all work as a process. It doesn't matter if you're delivering a product, if you're delivering a service, or if you're building an association. There's a certain element of work that goes into that, and there's a certain set of processes that must be followed in order to build that association, to deliver that product or service effectively. Going back to scientific principle again, both presentations before focused on using data to guide decisions. We don't just make decisions based on our intuition. We use data, and this is where the statistics come in. There are a lot of ways to model structure and understand the structure of the decisions that we have to make, and then respond wisely to variation. Again, back to a sequential learning strategy, we need to understand, and I'm going to go through each of these 10 steps. This is the framework. Understand the problem context, again, from the process systems view. Define the problem, not observable symptoms. Previous presenter just discussed that in the DMAIC by expanding the D process with her methodology. Analyze process variation, changes in the mean or the variation of the process. Look at this next. Understand what the real problem is, what the root causes of process variation are, not just the symptoms. Develop a theory. That's how changes in root causes will reduce the variation. Test the theory using data, and that's to develop and further your process knowledge, even in building associations, especially in working with human beings. You have to work off of theory and develop a means of measuring your changes to determine whether or not your proposed association is moving toward improved collective action. Modify the theory as necessary. Develop a solution strategy, develop and execute tactics to implement the solution, and validate and deploy the solution. Again, sequential learning strategy, understand the problem context. It does not matter if you're building rockets, if you're delivering a meal as a service at a restaurant, or if you're building an association to produce some collective action that the individuals cannot deliver themselves. You have inputs. You have suppliers of those inputs. Quite often, you will be a supplier in building the association, but you have to have suppliers of your inputs. The process itself is the transformation. You always have to take those inputs, transform them into usable outputs. That's what your customers and clients came to you for, because they couldn't get that themselves. They can't build their automobile. They can't provide a particular type of Italian meal, and they can't provide the collective outcomes of an association that you can. So again, continue thinking in terms of the process and the transformation, and then how do we do the feedback adjustment to the inputs in order to adjust them and to provide an association that yields collective outcomes that the individuals themselves cannot yield. 8 dimensions of product quality. I'm going to step through these. I've always been surprised how many people talk about quality. My wife talks about quality in terms of Walmart versus Macy's. They both sell quality products, but it's just a function of the level of performance, the intended functionality. So performance, this is the intended functionality that people look for in products. I can either walk, I can buy a bicycle, or I can buy an automobile, and they have all intended performance characteristics. And as long as they meet the intended functionality, that's a quality product. Reliability, and this applies not only to, we'll see in a minute, to products, but what's the failure rate? Once you deliver that initial quality, how long does that quality perform until it fails? Durability, that's the product lifetime. Serviceability, ease of product repair. Aesthetics, these are the subjective product dimensions. I always like to joke that when my wife and I went to buy her a new car a few years ago, I was looking at all the specs and she was looking at the colors. And a lot of people do make decisions based on aesthetics, but the aesthetics have to be there, as we see in a minute in the next slide. Features, these are competitive satisfiers. Perceived quality, we'll see this again, the reputation that you build in delivering your quality, the competitiveness of your association, or not competitiveness, but the collective action of your association, how good you are at doing that, you build a reputation. And then for products, quite often, if you're selling into Europe in particular, you have to meet certain standards, conformance to standards. Brings us to the 5 dimensions of service quality. This comes out of the ServQual model developed in the 1980s. A little bit of debate on the development of the model, but ASQ's pretty much adopted this as the service dimensions of service quality. One is responsiveness, that's the promptness for request of service, helpfulness of the provider, timely completion of the response. I like to use the restaurant example. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a restaurant and we sit there and we wait. And if they're not there within 2 minutes, my wife is getting antsy because she's ready to get up and leave. She wants her tea. She wants. And I absolutely agree. There is a limit that you'll wait before you judge the organization not to be responsive. Professionalism, knowledge and skills of the service providers, a reflection of organizational competency, getting back to the organizational reputation on the previous slide. Attentiveness, caring and personalized attention in addressing customer needs or your clients' needs and concerns, and helping them develop an association for more powerful collective action. Reliability, again, the ability to perform the promised service dependably every time that is demanded. And then tangibles, these are the surroundings, the appearance, the facilities, the equipment, etc., and your communication materials. All of this goes into your professional image. I like Donro's, I added this slide while I was listening to the previous, forgive me, Mark, if you're trying to keep up with me, but I added this slide. This is excellent. This is Donro's 1984 service model. Notice that there's functional quality. So if you're building a product, that's the process of building the product. Then there's technical quality, that's the use of the product. Same thing applies to services or building association. There's the functional quality, that is the process of providing the service. That is the process of building the association and managing the association. And the technical quality in the case of a service quality is how well we met the 5 dimensions of quality, and whether or not they are satisfied with the meal, satisfied that they arrived on time with their airplane flight, etc. And for associations, it's the technical quality is the assessment of the collective action of the association that you've helped build. So, but around all of this, is the interaction. The ovals are the interaction of the client, the client or the client or customer. There's some expected service, some expected outcomes. They interact with you during the development of that functional quality piece. This is where you get the expressive interactions. Then you deliver your association. They evaluate the collective outcomes from your association, and that becomes the perceived service that you have delivered. That all feeds back into the corporate image. And this, if you're successful in building powerful associations, then that builds your corporate image. So I like this. There's really no difference between delivering a product, delivering a service, or building an association. You have the functional quality, the process of getting there, and the technical quality, the outcomes. And this is another reason I stuck to the term business instead of association in the title, because we're all constrained by 3 things. Doesn't matter if you're building, if you're large scale manufacturing, if you're a proprietor, if you're a restaurant, if you're building associations, we're constrained by cost, time delivery, and quality performance. It has to be at a cost that your clients are willing to pay. It has to be delivered when they need the association outcomes, and it has to be at the level of performance that they determine as acceptable for collective action. So to remain competitive, it doesn't matter whether you're building, if you're IBM or Joe's air conditioning service, to remain competitive, you've got to balance cost, time delivery, quality performance across the entire organization. Again, getting back to the systemic context. I used the SIPOC, referenced this earlier. I'm not going to go into this. This is kind of an eye chart, but a SIPOC, again, it goes exactly back to our process. We have suppliers, we have inputs, we have processes. That's the transformation in building associations, powerful associations, and outputs that are experienced by our clients, and that's the effectiveness of the associations that you build. So I use the SIPOC. I'm not going to go into this again, it's an eye chart, but there is within the Lean Six Sigma DMAIC methodology, the defined methodology, this is where we start. We start with where's our process, what's the boundaries of the process, and then we go forward to the client's nest. What are our outputs? What are the clients looking for in our outputs? Then we work back to the process, and then we work back to the suppliers and back to the process. So that's why the arrows are going both ways. But we start with that process step that we're trying to improve. And more importantly, I mentioned earlier, do not, in your problem statement, do not manage the symptoms. Take those, the symptoms are the deficiencies that your clients experience with your service or your output. You have to drill down, they talked about it earlier, with the Gimbal Walk. In management, we call it management by walking around. You have to go down and touch it, feel it, and see it, and find out where the problem is, where the deficiency is in terms of additional variation in your process. Define the problem, again, has to be clearly linked to customer expectations versus you as a supplier, your variation. State the current status. The previous speaker talked about this earlier, using DMAIC. What's the current state? What's the gap between the state, current state, and what the client expectations are? What's our strategic plan to close that gap? We'll continue that discussion as we go through. Key term here is the third bullet up. A problem statement should never contain a solution. It should only contain the problem statement. One of the biggest problems I've always had with Six Sigma black belts when I used to manage those, they come in and say, oh, you know, if we just buy this machine and set it in place, it'll solve this problem. Well, what's the root cause of the problem? I'd make them go get the SOP, do the management by walk around or the Gimbal Walk, and come back and tell me where the real problem was, what was the source of variation that was causing the gap between client expectations and our delivery capabilities. Analyze the process. We want to sort signal from noise, and that's where the statistical thinking comes in. We can have two types of signal. We can have signal from around the mean. In other words, the average is different from the target that the client wants. It's typically, well, can be over or less, depending on whether or not there's a target. Or you can have too much spread for the specification limits. In the case of on the left-hand side, for defects or for categorical type quality items, they're usually measured in terms of being there or not being there, or the frequency of occurrence. Think in terms of critical, major, minor. Also think in terms of the count rate. For example, on the left-hand side under critical, you can see the second defect, the tolerated, is about half of what we're actually delivered by our product and service. That becomes what you want to focus on to correct and fix. Criticals and majors have to be corrected. The minors, typically those are the trivial many that really don't have an impact on your client's outcomes in terms of the collective action. But you still need to understand those, because if you have too many trivial many, they become a nuisance to your client. As you can see, if you can see my pointer right here, then the last one, it's minor, doesn't affect them, but at some point it can become just a nuisance that affects your reputation. I don't have. So this is the key. If you don't remember anything else today, what I said about statistical engineering, this is the key right here. We want to sort signal from noise. You have quality that you're delivering to your customer. Doesn't matter if it's product quality, service quality, or some kind of association collective action that they can't get otherwise. But they have some expectations. And your process can only do one thing. It can add variation, structural variation, and that's why it's in red. the V, design, production, and delivery, because you have to design the association, you have to produce it, and then you have to deliver it. And then there's some random variation. So what you have to manage so developing association, delivering services, delivering products, is the design, the additional variation, structural variation that you build into your association, you build into your service or product during the design, production, and delivery phases of your process. To understand the real problem, this is the Ishikawa diagram. I throw it up here just as a reference. Excellent tool for analyzing a source of a problem. It divides the problem into measurements, materials, people on the upper side, and on the lower side, the environment, process, machines. This has been used for years. It's used for product development, service development, it's used in project management. I would suggest it can be easily used in development of associations for collective capabilities. Develop a theory of how changes in root causes reduce variation. A theory, and you want to do theories about special cause variation, theories about the V right here. What additional structure are you building into the association that was not expected by the client and actually detracts from the effectiveness, the collective effectiveness of your association? The theory about a special causes, we're stating it in terms of the y equals f of x. F of x is the expected product. The v of x is the additional variation that you build in that you don't want. And then the random variation you can do nothing about. This is typically easier to find and fix. This requires total re-engineering the random error. So I have a weight loss example. Let's say you're running a weight loss program, and there's some weight at the start, and you have some f of x. So you have a caloric intake. You have a diet that controls the caloric intake. But what you can't control is the calories expended by your clients. There might be some clients that say, well, I've reduced my caloric intake, but I still haven't lost as much weight as I wanted to. Other clients say, yeah, I reduced my caloric intake and I followed your exercise plan exactly, and I'm getting these results. So there are the expended calories is the thing you can't control, that you may need to find some way to control. There are common, and don't forget the common types of physical and human processes. There are different types, and I emphasize this in all of my classes. There's the linear types, the polynomial types, linear types. Let's go to the next slide. It's linear, polynomial, time series, exponential. These are the fundamentals. A linear process, we typically think in terms of linear processes. These are things that are additive: machining, assembly, laminations, anything where you put some things together and they don't interact. A polynomial process, how many of you think you know about polynomial processes? Do any of you know a polynomial process you experience every day of the week? That's assuming that you can drive. Well, I'll tell you this, automobile braking distance is a polynomial process. It's a quadratic process of the distance. The braking distance is equal to the reaction time, which is strictly linear, but the braking distance, once you've applied your brakes, is the velocity in feet or meters per second squared divided by 250F. So you run into polynomial processes all the time. Likewise, you run into time series processes. Oops, sorry, Steve, I'm on the wrong set of slides on another screen. Likewise, you run into exponential processes. Cracks propagate at an exponential rate in materials. We're dealing with an exponential process right now called COVID. SARS-2 is it spreads exponentially, and that's why you talk about going up the curve. There are power law distribution processes. So think about, in terms of that B, what process am I dealing with? Because you have to develop a different management strategy for linear, than for polynomial, than for time series, than for exponential. They require different management strategies to produce an effective association. Common types, model structure is not arbitrary. Your model must reflect the underlying human, economic, physical processes that you have to manage to produce an effective association. Our models, we're going to use models to predict future performance, for forecast beyond the certain current time period. Measure, again, going back, we have to have metrics, measure how effective we are in changing our process and improving our process to remove sources of variations, and understanding controllable and non-controllable process variation. Model building in Excel, it can be done in Excel. In fact, I use Excel as my exploratory data tool just to put some stuff together and play around. You can use it for exploratory analysis, testing hypotheses, hypothesizing models. You can build some simple models. Again, minimum model structure. That's we're always after parsimony in our models. Validating the models, deploying and managing those models. Again, data, the various descriptive statistics, charts, hypothesis testing using analysis tool pack, and you can build formulas, mathematical functions, statistical functions, do some statistical testing in Excel. And again, this is a spiral process. We have some data. From the data, we try to understand structure, develop hypothesis. We analyze the data to test the hypothesis, develop a model, look at the structural variation, whether or not we've solved the problem, develop a new hypothesis, and that continues over and over and over. It's a continuous sequential learning strategy. We never stop improving. And develop a solution strategy. Ponder and deliberate before you make a move, Sun Tzu. Design strategy describes how product or service improvements will be integrated into the business strategy. It's not just making the improvements, do they support the business strategy of building effective collective associations? And then strategic planning involves gathering data and deciding on a path that the business will take to achieve its improvement goals. You have to have improvement goals, going back to today's discussion. Strategic thinking involves everyone in all levels of the business consistently finding and contributing to activities that add to the organization's effort to achieve improvement goal. Key questions are, we heard this in the previous two discussions, where are we now? Where do we need to be after the improvement? And how will we get to the improved state? Develop and execute tactics. This comes out of the ISEA. I'm going to go through it quickly. Assess, gain an understanding of your product, your association, your service in a holistic, systemic way. Understand, establish new business goals and objectives expected from the improvement project, and develop key metrics that you can use to guide your improvement. Learn. This is not a one-time done deal. We walk away, we take the magic pill. You're going to have to go through this cyclical improvement process over and over. Learn. Execute and implement the improvement project plan, ensuring that entire team understands. This is everybody involved in the association. Strategic thinking requires collaboration. And check. As the tasks are completed at each milestone, reassess project effectiveness and achieving the stated goals and objectives. Return to the learn step until the improvement project is complete. Finally, validate. There's only one validation. That's the voice of your client, the voice of your customer. Confirm that your improved product, service, or the effectiveness of your association meets your client's expectations in practice and use. I'm going to skip the validation process since I've probably run over my 43. I went a little bit over Mark said I would. I always stuff about 10 pounds of dirt in a 5-pound bag. If you have some additional discussion or questions, and I'll give this presentation to Mark, he's a distributor with Debbie. You can reach me at tcotter@odu.edu. Thank you for your time. I also want to acknowledge Old Dominion University. for their allowing me to pursue my research in statistical engineering. Tidewater section of ASQ, they've been my professional home for about 20 years now. I think Debbie was just a 19-year-old kid when I joined. ISEA, they gave me permission to use a lot of the information in the slides. And PDCHR, in every organization, in every venture, there is that organization, that one element that brings the glue, that binds it together. It's the glue of the organization. And I found PDCHR that is the glue that binds together various professional organizations for professional development. There you go. Questions, comments, and I don't have my chat up.
All right, Stephen, thank you very much for that. Again, looking through the chat box, I think you covered everything. I had a couple of questions, but I didn't. I don't see any new ones. So I've got a question for you. And in the meantime, if people do have questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat box.
Or questions for all of us. This would be a good time. You know, don't put me on the spot here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, I have a bunch of questions, but here's one, and this might be one for you and Lucy, if still with us to consider. Is so the Gimbal Walk, you know, the management by walking around, look, feel, touch, and all that. Where did that live in? Where does that live in the time of COVID? I mean, obviously, you know, manufacture things virtually, but a lot of other non-manufacturing, non-heavy touch stuff is still going on. So where's that fit in?
I ought to just default to Lucy here. That's a tough question in the time of COVID. It really doesn't matter. Ultimately, as I've found, management by walking around Gimbal Walks, you have to go out and physically understand the process, because when we create models are not only, and we all have mental models. I have this mental model of how I'm going to get from here to ODU when I go to campus to teach. And that mental model doesn't always work out, because occasionally I run into traffic jams and I have to go alternate routes. But models are not only, and we all have models are not only a representation of the product, the association performance, they're also a filter. And if we are not careful and don't go out and actually see how the association is performing with respect to customer expectations, we don't understand the internal structure of how those outcomes are produced, then we're still up here managing on symptoms. So to answer your question, Mark, you still have to do, from my perspective, I'll let Lucy give her perspective. You still have to go out, touch it, feel it, see it, because the numbers don't tell you everything. There's that final translation. There's that qualitative piece that the numbers can't tell you. And that's why lean has always been an effective set of effective methodologies that Six Sigma originally didn't have. Your thoughts, Lucy?
Yeah, so in a virtual environment, and thinking of my auditing experience, I would say that you can look at procedures, and you can have maybe a web conference with the process owner and ask them, you know, how do they do the process versus how it's written in the procedure. If there's no procedure, you can just ask them how they're doing the process, ask them what frustrates them, and you can do this in a virtual meeting. And it doesn't have to be a physical process. It can be a digital process. There are so many of us out there who just work on the computer all day long. So those are some good situations where you can do a Gimbal Walk virtually without having to go into a factory or a plant somewhere.
Yeah, and for our audience today in building effective, motivated associations, Lucy's right. It's really the human element, and you're walking through the human element and learning how to query them, how to understand the feedback that they're giving. So you're still doing a Gimbal Walk.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Stu. No other questions popped up. So Debbie, how about you take it from here?
Hey, Mark, I have a question.
Oh,
Bill.
okay, go ahead, Bill.
It's for Stephen. It's just clarification. I don't know if you can go back to your slides, but I think it was
I
about
should be still sharing, yeah.
Yes.
slide number 9. It was on applying statistical thinking 9. And you had the sequential learning strategy, and it was the
Oh,
formula.
sequential thinking, applying 9 right here.
Yes.
Yep.
So the V, or the variable that was in red, right? I heard it as only a negative.
No, it's not a negative. It is going back to the Gimbal walk to management by walking around. We are, it's not a negative. Anytime you have, you're delivering a product, you have to design, produce and deliver that product, or that through some set of processes. We always have some element of bias, to use the statistical term, between what the customer expects and what we deliver. This is mathematically or statistically impossible not to have bias in the process. And that's the structure I'm getting at there. We want to take that bias out, so we're always approaching what the customer expects. And that's why we use a sequential learning strategy in statistical engineering. It's not negative, it's a recognition of the reality of us as human beings. We just cannot build that association that's exactly what our client wants, but we can build the initial association, understand the structure that we can understand and fix using the DMAIC methodology, or the problem solving here, and we can reduce that bias and always go closer and closer to what that expected performance is in the product, in the association outcomes, etc. So it's not negative, it's just a recognition that there's always structural bias in anything we do versus what's expected by the customer.
Okay, so thanks for that. I was understanding it slightly different, and so that helped clear it up. I saw it as you basically have the customer's expectation, and then each company, each person, each delivery vehicle will either add things that enhance that, or add things that actually take it away.
Well, no, not add or take away. Think of it in terms of just deviation from expected variation. You can have deviation. You can exceed customer expectations in some areas, and you can not reach customer expectations in others. These are the ones that you want to understand with that V in the design, production, and delivery of your product, your service, or the association that you build for your clients.
Okay, gotcha. All
Good
right,
question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm a soccer referee, so I refereed a game last night at Longwood, and I figured I can never match that, because what their expectations are impossible for our performance. So it was right to my heart, right there.
Yeah, understood. But no, just think of it as a structural deviation from what the customer expects. As long as that structural deviation exceeds, hey, we're good to go. You want to understand where that structural deviation is deficient and reduce that deficiency. And that's through the sequential learning process and strategy.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it back over to our leaders.
All right. Okay, Debbie.
Thank you, Dr. Cotter. As Dr. Cotter was in his presentation, I was reflecting on how that statistical thinking, even though that seems so technical, but it really does follow the same concept that Lucy presented with the discovery phase, and really focusing on having a strategic approach, a well thought out approach to finding and planning improvement. And we can all relate to that in our day jobs, as well as leaders of organizations, with the concept of ensuring quality at our organizations. Quality is really successful outcomes will happen with the strategic planning, as Dave talked about, And then both Lucy and Dr. Cotter were talking about choosing tools and processes that can help you accomplish your goals, methodical, process-driven. That's what our society is all about. So thank you so much, all three presenters, for your time today. We appreciate it and hope we can all see each other again in the future in a similar format to learn.
All right, Debbie, thank you very much for that. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring us home. So please don't. I hit the wrong button. I am dropping in the chat box right now a request for you. Unfortunately, that first link is not clickable. So if you could, if everybody could open up survey.pdchr.org, it's right on top of the little 3 asterisks in front of it. Go ahead and open it up. You don't have to fill it out right now, but I'd appreciate it if you fill it out. This is our opportunity to gather the voice of the customer, you, as well as this is my chance right now to say thank you all for attending. I hope you picked up 1, 2, or a dozen nuggets that will help your membership association and will help you in your or will help you in your day job. I want to thank American Society for Quality, Section 1128, which is based right here in my neighborhood. Debbie and the rest of her leadership crew for joining in with us on this partnership. This is kind of a new thing for PDCHR, these seminars, and I think this is like, fantastic. It's kind of like association management 200 level classes. So this is really cool. Finally, also in the chat box, so coming up on Wednesday, September the 8th at noon Eastern Daylight Time, we're going to be having a session, a workshop on structuring the membership offering. So how do you actually come up with what's valuable to your members to keep them, as well as to attract new members into your association. So with that, again, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Debbie. Thank each and every one of you for attending. And we said we're going to noon. It's 11:55. I hope each and every one of you enjoys the gift of time. On Wednesday, you'll receive an email. Thank you for being here with a link back to our resources pages. So with that, you are free to move about the country, move about the countryside in a safe and respectful manner. So thank you all for attending.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody.
All right, Bill, thank you.
Talk to you later.
All right, take care all. Hey, Erez, I see you there. Before you hang up, could you send me your email address in the chat room, private? Those of you who are hanging out, I'm going to leave this open for 3 minutes. You might be privately chatting with somebody else. So I will actually shut this meeting down at noon. But I am going to stop recording now.